how information, security, risk, and governance are practiced today. Let me start by setting expectations clearly while I'm sharing my screen. Here it is. Now, Sharon, please let me know if you can watch it or not.
Yes, it's visible, but like we don't still see your screen fully.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Now you can see? Perfect.
Yes, working fine.
Perfect. Okay, let's start. Like I was saying, let me start with setting expectations clearly today. This is not going to be a session that is about ISO clauses, Annex A controls, or how to pass an audit. This is a session about leadership, decisions, and accountability. Because in 2024 and beyond, cybersecurity incidents are rarely the result of ignorance or lack of framework. We all are currently implementing a framework. They are the result of implicit decisions, unclear boundaries, and risk that we are accept by default, not by design. So let's start. Most organizations today can say with confidence, we are certified, right? And that matters. Certification requires effort, structure, and discipline. But certifications alone does not guarantee clarity. In many organizations, even mature ones, I still hear the same struggles. Security teams implementing controls without knowing which risks truly matter, business leaders improving exceptions without understanding cumulative exposure, risk registers that grow but never really shrink because we are not controlling or mitigating them as we think we are. Controls are implemented, but decisions are not clarified. And this is why, after every major incident, boards still ask, are we safe? And the honest answer is that cyber safety is not binary. The better, more honest question is, what risk are we accepting that align with who we are as a business? That question is the essence of risk appetite. So, why is risk appetite more critical now than ever? Well, because the nature of cyber risk has fundamentally changed. First, cloud and SaaS concentration means that a small number of providers now operate at global scale. A single disruption can affect thousands of organizations simultaneously. Second, vendor ecosystems have expanded our attack surface now far beyond our own infrastructure. Today, your outage may start in someone else's environment. So, third, identity has become the control plane. Credentials, approval workflows, and access path determine how far an attacker or a mistake can go. Fourth, security tooling itself has become operationally critical. Tools designed to protect us can also disrupt us if not governed properly. And finally, the speed of digital transformation that we are living, cloud automation, AI, such a headache. for every security specialist nowadays, has outpaced governance maturity in many organizations. This leads to one unavoidable conclusion. Modern cyber incidents are often dependency failures, not missing policies. And dependencies require boundaries, not just controls. Mhm. So we are going to explore this first case. Here, we're going to make a deep dive. Um, so here, the risk appetite question in this case would be, what level of operational disruption are we willing to accept from one supplier dependency? So what this case teaches us is that the supplier risk is no longer an IT concern. It is an ecosystem risk. The organization didn't just lose systems, it lost time, cash flow, trust, and negotiating power all at once. And the key lesson is this: risk appetite must explicitly address concentration and dependency risk, because without that, single suppliers quietly become tier zero uh, by default. Business continuity assumptions remain untested. Leadership only realizes the dependency when it fails. A major organization would ask before the incident, is this supplier critical to revenue continuity? Do we have a tested fallback or exit plan? Is this dependency acceptable at board level? So the ISO expects supplier relationships to be governed, but risk appetite defines how much dependency is too much. So in early 2004, this ransomware incident at Change Healthcare disrupted claims processing and payment flows across the US healthcare ecosystem. This wasn't a localized ITI issue, right? It cascaded across providers, pharmacies, and patients. Executives face immediate pressure in this case. Continuity of care. So this case poses a critical leadership question. What level of operational disruption are we willing to accept from a single supplier dependency? That's the key question that we all must answer. If that question cannot be answered clearly, then the organization does not have risk appetite. It has simply assumptions. So, so let's define risk appetite in a way that leaders can actually use. So risk appetite is not a technical construct. Risk appetite is the explicit boundary of acceptable risk, cyber risk exposure, aligned with business objectives, resilience expectations, and obligations. To make it usable at board level, it must be translated into 4 dimensions leaders understand. So we have four dimensions: financial impact, operational disruption, regulatory and legal exposure, trust, and reputation. And I like to apply 3 very simple tests. If it doesn't change our decision, then it's not appetite. If it's not measurable in time, well, it's definitely not usable. And if no one owns it, no one can govern it. And in every committee or board level presentation, no one brings this status, how we are um, working, how we are um, advancing each step, then sadly it won't work. And that it's the truth, the hard truth. So, so as well, we need to know what risk appetite is not. It's equally important to clarify it. What risk appetite it's not. Well, it's not low, medium, or high risk. This classification that we all are very used to work with. It's that language is meaningless when a crisis finally hits, and we all know that. But we sadly realize it when it's too late. It's not a paragraph in a policy that no one remembers. Hmm? A paragraph that only you use it when you remember it when you are currently being audited, right? When there's the auditor there and he's trying to put you on observation. Oh, no, I had this paragraph. And you believe that it's sort of your Bible, right? So it's not something security defines alone, of course. And most importantly, it's not static. As the business changes, as technology evolves continuously, and as threats are evolving, adapting, cy- cyber cyber criminals are all the time looking for different ways to make life simpler for them and giving us all nightmares all the time, of course. But um, we are evolving. We're continuously evolving as the good part there and them that also the evil part. So we are combining forces that we are trying to struggle in this ecosystem, yes, that we are currently living in. So appetite as well must evolve. Okay. So risk appetite is governance behavior, not documentation. And we have to really interiorize this as much as possible. So, so let's talk about why ISO implementations in real life often fail in practice. Okay. These are three traps that I continuously see, that I see repeatedly. Um, the first is the normalization of deviance. We are full of temporary exceptions that that never stay temporary, right? They become permanent through years, through months, years, through centuries, and no one remembers them. No one remembers who um, give the approval. No one wants to be responsible for it, right? So um these temporary exceptions become permanent or forgotten forever. Risk slowly becomes how we operate. What are we missing? What are we not seeing? What are we not properly controlling? It was a critical exception, perhaps, that we all forgot. Not even first line, not even second line. No one, no one recalls it. No one remember it. And perhaps when an auditor comes, we all are going to be like getting so crazy about this, right? So this happens a lot. And many incidents nowadays have occurred because of these exceptions that no one remembers, no one follows up, they're left behind. So the second one is control theater. There is not that we comply. We passed audits with so much effort. We have been flown, but a lot of documentation, a lot of procedures, manuals, um, policies, a lot of them, and we make the extraordinary effort of really keep up with them months before we know that the auditor is going to come. So it's a huge effort to pass this audit, but controls do not actually reduce exposure, and we're not measuring if these controls that are in all our documentation, in all our papers, are really effective or not. If these controls are really going to reduce our exposure, and what really are them mitigating in reality, being as cold, and 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 sometimes that's what we need. We need to our self audit. We need to audit ourselves. So the third one is inherited risk. So we know vendors, platforms, and tools end up deciding our exposure for us. Yes, that happens a lot. And that happens a lot because um, that's what currently is going to happen always. So um, we have to find a way. Yeah, we have to find a way to be managers of our of the measurement of our own exposure, our own level of exposure. We have to uh, manage that. Yes, we can extract, we can receive perhaps reports from different vendors, platforms, and tools that we are currently working with, but at the end of the day, we are deciding our exposure for us. Okay, that's that's the truth. That's the thing. And this this whole thing that we are talking now leads to a very uncomfortable truth. And it's that most organizations don't consciously accept risk. They have no idea of which risks they are living with. They just inherit them. Okay. They inherit a house from from one moment or another, from an old aunt that we never met in our entire life, but we have a house there and we don't know all the problems this house may have. We just inherit them. So risk appetite is what breaks this cycle, this all this situation now. So so this is where the iOS, the ISO becomes powerful. Okay. ISO is not just a control catalog from we can from where we can choose, okay, now I'm going to implement this set of controls or that one. No, it is a governance system. Okay. It forces whole all the organizations to define what finally matters most to us. So we need to analyze our context, right? We need to know what uh, what are the the strategic objectives of our company, um, in which sector we are currently working, um, what our neighbors, what our other companies that are currently in the same sector doing right now. Um, we have to analyze our processes. Uh, so all this context analysis that it really needs to be done is what really matters. So we all need to know who owns the risk, right? Who um who is finally taking the leadership of the risk that we have identified. And another thing that happens a lot is sometimes people from the areas of the company thinks that we are responsible of identifying risks, and that certainly it's a myth, right? Because um, we identify we can help we can help with the methodology, with with the with the people that are owners, process owners, because we have to identify our process owners with, through all the company, and they are the ones who know perfectly how their process is working, how their process is currently what that needs, what it's not so well worked with, and they are going to be the ones that are going to identify which risks um, exist, which risk finally um, are there. So yes, we really indeed need to um, to identify who finally owns that risk, and this process owner must uh, take the leadership of that risk and be responsible follow the follow up, and to us, inform the cybersecurity area. Okay, this is working this way. I told you that perhaps this control was a way to really contain or mitigate this risk, but well, I think we're having a problem because we have some sort of incident last week. So can we have another session to discuss more properly about this? So, and this is part of our of the work that we need to keep doing continuously every moment. So how risk is measured, that's another important thing that we need to uh, be really aware of. How decisions are documented. Mhm. Everything must be documented. And for documented, I don't mean in that you need to establish everything on the policy, perhaps, but there always must be, after a session that we have decided something, an email that really circles it up and makes everyone really clear of all the responsibilities that had been taken during the session, right? So, and how improvement happens over time. Okay, ISO gives structure, but we have to be very careful because risk appetite gives direction. Okay, without appetite, ISO would become just mechanical. It would make us some sort of robots, right? Right, some sort of robots that we are like um trying to make this work and only be prepared for when the audit is just coming, right? With appetite, ISO becomes strategic. That's the key. We need to include appetite, this effort of governance of appetite to become, in order to become more strategic. So clarity also requires shared language. Okay, so risk appetite is the strategic boundary owned by the board. Okay, risk tolerance translate that boundary into operational threshold. Risk acceptance is the specific documented decision by a named risk owner, process owner, how do you want to call it? So, for example, no tier zero, no critical service for us without tested restore drills, for example. That single statement eliminates hours of debate through a crisis. So let's start with this. We have another case here, and in 2004, CDK Global suffered a ransomware incident that disrupted thousands of automotive dealerships, and dealers were unable to perform core business operations. Business continuity became a vendor dependency issue. Mhm. So, in this part, let's dive in. The risk appetite question here was, are we willing to depend on one platform without a tested fallback? Hmm? This case demonstrates that business continuity can be outsourced unintentionally. Many organizations believe that they have strong internal resilience, but core processes depend on a single external platform. Alternatives exist only on paper. That's a harsh truth. Exit strategies are contractual, but not operational. Okay. And the learning here is risk appetite must define acceptable levels of platform dependency, not just vendor security posture. Okay. So we must so we must realize, okay, so we must realize at the end of the day, if we are going to that we need to accept this these levels of of platform dependency. Okay. So without appetite, platform lock-in is accepted by default, right? Recovery plans just assume vendor availability. Mhm. Leadership has finally no leverage during crisis, and we all gonna start getting just crazy. And a mature appetite statement will clearly say at this point during this crisis which platforms are allowed to be single points of failure. Which platforms? Which platforms require tested alternatives? Hmm? We need to know that before a crisis. Which risk must be escalated to the board if any crisis related to this platform, to this process occur? We need to have that clearly straight. So ISO give us give us supplier controls, right? Appetite tell us what dependency becomes unacceptable. Mm. So we need to really clarify that line at the end of the day. So We have as well another case here. Yeah, this one is related to, yes, for another case from 2004, right? That we are currently watching. So another 2004 case reinforced a key lesson here. That is, identity defines the blast radius. Uh-huh. Privilege access and monitoring gaps allowed incidents to escalate rapidly, and perhaps executives focus on detection, containment, and transparency, not technical controls at the end of the day, right? So at the end, what is the risk appetite question here that we have to to finally get to? What privilege access risk is unacceptable at the end of the day? Hmm? So this case reinforces a modern reality. Identity, at the end of the day, is no longer just an access control. It is the blast radius. When privileged access is misused or poorly monitored, well, detection is going to be delayed. Containment is going to be a nightmare. It's going to be harder. Impact scales rapidly. And the learning is not implement more AM tools, right? For authentication. No, the learning is risk appetite must define which identity failures are unacceptable, regardless of convenience or cost. Because at the end of the day, without appetite, privileged accessions multiply and become uncontrolled at the finally. So legacy access remains temporarily. Yes. And monitoring gaps are tolerated. Yes. So a mature organization must define zero tolerance for unmanaged privilege access, clear escalation for identity related exceptions. Yes. And board visibility into identity risk metrics. So we need to really define a sort uh, a number of risk metrics that we are going to present on each um, C-level board, because it's important for them to see how we are going, and what things probably later on they will need to approve us um, um, budget to implement. Perhaps we are not as good as they thought. So they need they need to see they need to see what are our shortcomings, right? So ISO requires access control. Risk appetite defines how much identity risk leadership is willing to live with. And I have here another case about an incident related to CrowdStrike. Yes. So in this case, the CrowdStrike incident in 2004 is especially powerful because it was not cyber attacked, yet it caused widespread disruption across industries. I don't know if you all remember, but it showed that change management maturity is part of cyber resilience. So at this point, what's the risk appetite question there? What operational risk from vendor updates are we prepared to accept? Hmm? So this case breaks a dangerous assumption. Security controls are always safe by default. But here the risk did not come from attackers, right? It came from change. So the learning here is clear. Operational resilience must include security tooling itself without risk appetite. Updates are finally trusted blindly. Yes, who is going to, who is reviewing their updates? You just trust them. You sadly just trust them. Rollback capability is assumed as well. Oh, here's here's the plan. At the end there's the rollback plan. There's a line, just a few words. And we believe that, oh, it's fine. Change approved. Right. So change governance excludes security platforms. Hmm? A mature appetite would define which systems require stage rollouts at the end of the day, where rollback is mandatory or not, when updates must be paused or reviewed, because we need to review them and we need to analyze as well when is the most appropriate part of the day, week, hour, minute that change, that update can be made. So ISO covers change management, risk appetite, defines how much disruption is acceptable from protective controls themselves. And this is the last case about cloud credential abuse. And here in 2004, multiple incidents show how credential-based access to cloud platforms can lead to massive data exposure. So cloud centralization amplifies impact. Reputational damage is immediate. And here the appetite question is, what exposure do we accept from centralized cloud data stores? Hmm? And this case highlights a structural shift that it's cloud centralization amplifies both value and risk. When credentials are compromised, like in this case, data loss, it's immediate. Impact, it's global. Reputation damage spreads instantly. So the learning is not cloud is risky. The learning is risk appetite must define acceptable data concentration and access models. Without appetite, sensitive data accumulates unchecked. That's a reality. Long-lived credentials persist. There's no revocation. So we really have to look up this thing. Monitoring gaps are tolerated. Hmm? So a mature organization decides which data can be centralized, which access patterns are unacceptable for us at the end of the day, and which risk require executive sign-off. So ISO requires data protection. Risk appetite defines how much exposure leadership is willing to tolerate in cloud architectures. So we have dive in for different cases, but all at the end of the day, let us know that we really need to go beyond and really ask us how this is going to be, how this is related to risk appetite. So what boards ask after incidents? Well, after incidents, boards don't ask for controls. The last thing they want to see are controls. They ask, could this happen to us? Where are we exposed today? Who approved this risk? What must be funded now? So risk appetite is the only way to answer these questions quickly and defensively. And um, for appetite to work, it must become guardrails. So here we have four guardrails that are very important to have in mind always. And the first one are non-negotiables. So we have here zero tolerance for boundaries. There are no longer boundaries allowed. Of course, thresholds, measurable tolerance levels. Yes, we need to define these levels, and we need to really define this with our risk owners, our process owners. They must be on the table with us discussing this. Decision triggers. We need to define escalation rules and approvals because when the crisis, the incident, it's occurring, we're not going to be there sitting, defining. We just need to act as quickly as possible because every second counts in that moment. And exception expiry. Yes, time box exceptions. Please stop normalizing exceptions that we're not currently following up, that no one is going to check. So we need really to have these four guardrails in mind. If appetite can absorb a risky decision, it's not effective. Let's apply this to a real go, no go decision before launching a critical service in our companies. We need to at least ask ourselves these things that are related to these four guardrails we have already seen. So, and the first one related to non-negotiable, we need to see, has fallback been tested? And if so, is there any exit plan required? As well as um, related to threshold, for example, we have to ask ourselves, are downtime thresholds defined? Critical downtime tolerance must be defined. For example, in this case, it has to be less than 4 hours, equal or less than 4 hours. The third one, decision trigger. Is escalation clear? We know which things that need to be escalated. How are we going to present it to the board approval? And for that, we need to map what's the impact, the cost. Perhaps we have before to take it to a previous committee. We need to have this whole process very carefully designed, and we need to practice it at least once a year, if not 2 times a year. Okay, and the fourth one, exception expiry. That it's uh, here the question is, are exceptions time boxed? Hmm? And we really need to be careful with these exceptions and perhaps define this time boxed around 30 to 90 years to 90 days per sorry. So and this needs to be and after these days have passed, they need reapproval because it needs to be checked again. Don't we don't need to approve things. Oh, we don't have to approve things just because oh we have been working that way from a lot of years ago. So yeah, that's the way. Please just approve this. No, we have to go beyond. Be curious. Let's ask everything we need to in order to always prove something, right? Because at the end of the day, everyone is going to be everyone is going to turn heads to the security department. Oh, they approved this, so they knew what they were doing. And if you approve and you didn't know what you were doing, well, there's a huge problem there. So this finally creates consistency and speed. So The risk appetite canvas brings everything together. It links business priorities, guardrails, decisions, and metrics at the end of the day. Once this exists, ISO governance becomes practical by design. And we have to have these four things in mind as well. Business anchor. Here, we need to define our strategic priorities, which are our critical services, our crown jewels that we need to protect at all cost, regulatory constraints, right? Um, Trust commitments that we are um, doing in some sort of processes related to appetite guardrails. Well, we have already seen these four these four parts that we need to have in mind all time. We have also to have a decision playbook. We need to accept, avoid, transfer, mitigate. We have to really have that in mind and not us in our risk owners, in our process owners' minds. They need to sign off. Yes, the risk owner. Minimum evidence required in majority of cases, and review cadence because we have to review everything. Not because we're going to get we are going to be audited in some months. We always need to be reviewing all the controls, all the exceptions, and as well board metrics. We need to um, define resilient tested KPIs, right? We really need to show them this this reality. We need to explain them about critical exposure SLAs that we have got that perhaps were negotiated before there was even a security team, or perhaps the process owner or the area doesn't think that this must um, go in. So of course, exception aging is another important thing. So these are six executive um, metrics that matter because mature organizations measure what finally change decisions, test recovery, exception aging, supplier compliance, identity protection. So vanity metrics don't prevent crisis, but decision metrics do. So you need to identify which are your executive metrics that you're going to present to the board level that make your appetite measurable. And um, finally, this statement can be adopted immediately because they remove ambiguity, they protect leadership, and more importantly, they enable accountability. So we need to have this in mind. And just to wrap it up, um, ISO gives us structure, risk appetite gives leadership. Um, and I will leave you with this final thought that if you can't explain your risk appetite in 60 seconds, you don't have one. Thank you very much. Happy to take your question if we have enough time or not, Gauri.
So much, Cassandra. Yes, I guess we can take one question that we already have in the chat box. Can you please elaborate accepted risk and outsourced risk? How risk appetite depend on these two? Hello.
I sorry, didn't hear you
Yeah,
properly.
there is one question in the
Mhm.
chat box. Can you please elaborate accepted risk and outsourced risk and how risk appetite depend on these two factors? Question is in the chat box. Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Cassandra? Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
There's one question in the chat box which says, can you please elaborate accepted
Mm-hmm.
risk and outsourced risk and how risk appetite depend on these
Yeah, I'm
two
reading.
factors?
Yes, I'm reading. Okay. Well, here's clear board level. Um, well, accepted risk is the risk the organization consciously decides to live with after evaluating